100 million radiation-blasted flesh-eating flies are falling from the sky, right now, over the jungles of Panama. Not by accident, on purpose. Each one is part of a living weapon, designed to commit a genocide that never ends. Sounds insane? It's not. In fact, this might be the most successful war humanity has ever fought. A war we've been winning for more than 50 years. But wait, why on earth would humans create and release flesh-eating parasites? How did a horrifying killer insect become our secret ally? And who exactly are we fighting in this bizarre, invisible war? This isn't science fiction. This is real. Happening now. Panama 2024. Deep in the heart of Central America, a high-tech facility runs 24 hours a day, producing swarms of mutant flies with one purpose only: to protect an entire continent. And here's the twist. These aren't enemies. These flies are heroes. Silent soldiers in a battle most Americans don't even know they're a part of. If you're in the US, especially in the southern states, your safety, your food supply and, yes, even your pets and cattle are all being guarded by this hidden biological force. So don't look away, because what you're about to learn will flip your understanding of science, nature, and war itself. Stay with us. The next few minutes will reveal one of the strangest, smartest, and most unsettling stories in modern history. Ready? Meet Cochliomyia hominivorax. The name means man-eater. And that's not a metaphor. This metallic green-blue fly with its blood-red eyes can smell an open wound from kilometers away. It doesn't matter if you're a deer, a cow, or a child with a scraped knee. If you're warm-blooded and bleeding, she's coming. The female screwworm fly doesn't just land and feed, she lays eggs, dozens, hundreds, into the wound itself. And when they hatch, the nightmare begins. Tiny, pale worms burrow straight into living tissue. Not dead flesh, not decay, number, they consume you alive. They chew with tiny hooked mandibles, tunneling deeper, causing agony, causing rot. The more you suffer, the more attractive you become to others like her. In days, a small scratch can become a crater of horror swarming with life that should never have been born. For centuries, this was just life in the Americas. Ranchers in Texas, children in Guatemala, wild animals. No one was safe. One outbreak in a single cow could infect an entire herd. Calves died before they could stand, mothers collapsed on the pasture, and all you could do was watch. Pesticides? Useless. How do you poison something inside a body? How do you protect millions of animals from every possible wound? You don't. The screwworm wasn't just another pest. It was nature's war crime. And for the longest time, it was winning. Just when all hope seemed lost, two scientists had an idea so wild, so absurd, that even their colleagues laughed. What if we didn't fight the screwworm? What if we tricked it into destroying itself? Here's the genius. Screwworm females only mate once in their short, brutal lives. Just once. One partner, one chance. So what if that one partner was sterile? No babies, no cycle, no next generation. The species would quietly vanish, not with poison, not with fire, but with silence. The problem? How do you sterilize millions of flies without killing them? The answer lay in a dark corner of science: radiation. By exposing screwworm pupae to just the right dose of gamma rays, researchers could scramble their reproductive cells while leaving the rest of the fly intact. It would look the same, fly the same, even mate like normal. But inside, dead. Suddenly, the battlefield changed. We weren't trying to kill every screwworm anymore. We just needed to outnumber them with imposters. Billions of useless, seductive males flooding the skies. It sounds like science fiction. But in the 1950s, this crazy, radioactive idea was about to become the first real weapon against one of nature's most horrifying parasites. And to test it, they built a paradise for flesh eaters. The test worked. Screwworms vanished from the island of Curacao. Gone, wiped out. Now it was time to go bigger. Much, much bigger. In Texas, a factory unlike anything the world had ever seen began to rise. Not to make weapons, not to make machines, to make flies. 150 million screwworms every single week. But not just any flies. These were carefully bred, nurtured, and sterilized soldiers, raised from birth for one purpose: sabotage. To make them feel at home, the larvae were fed a repulsive cocktail-powdered blood, milk, and eggs mixed into a warm, thick sludge. The temperature of the trays was kept precisely at the level of living tissue. The flies had to believe they were growing inside a wounded animal. It worked too well. The stench? Unimaginable. Airlines refused to ship the boxes, so factory workers sprayed them with cologne just to get the cargo on the plane. Each week, plane after plane lifted off, carrying crates of sterile screwworms high above the southern US. Then came the drops, a constant rain of buzzing bodies, invisible to most but deadly effective. And it spread. First Florida, then Texas, then Mexico, then into the wild green chaos of Central America. Every zone cleared became a victory not just for cattle and ranchers, but for science, for innovation, and for an idea that once sounded insane. But the war wasn't over yet. In 1988, the war took a terrifying turn. Screwworms escaped the Americas. No one knows exactly how. A shipment? A plane? A single fly with a belly full of eggs? But suddenly, they were in Libya. And Africa Massive, warm, full of wounds and wildlife, was the perfect hunting ground. If the Cochliomyia spread south, it could follow the Nile, sweep across the Sahel, and descend deep into regions with limited veterinary care and fragile infrastructures. The cost? Unthinkable. Millions of animals, entire food systems, gone. There was no time, no margin for error. So humanity struck back. Fast. Hundreds of millions of sterile flies were rushed and flown across the ocean from production facilities in the US and Mexico. Teams swept the countryside, inspecting millions of animals for the tiniest signs of infection. Planes dropped insects over remote desert towns. Villagers were educated on how to report strange wounds. Radios buzzed with emergency broadcasts. Posters went up. Governments aligned. It became one of the most intense biological containment operations in history. And somehow, it worked. In just 4 months, the outbreak was contained. Screwworms were gone. Again. It was the closest the world had come to disaster, and the clearest reminder that this war could never be declared over. Because all it takes is one. South America was too big, too wild, too politically fractured, too expensive. Eradicating screwworms from every rainforest, valley, and mountain would have taken decades, maybe centuries. So humanity made a deal with the terrain itself. At the narrowest point of the continent, they built a wall. Not of concrete, not of barbed wire, but of flies. Panama became the final line of defense. If the parasites couldn't pass through this narrow strip of land, they'd never reach the north again. And so, deep in the Panamanian jungle, a nuclear fly factory was born. It runs day and night, 7 days a week. Hundreds of millions of sterile screwworms are bred, irradiated, and released into the sky on a never-ending cycle. But this isn't the grim, bloody process from the early days. No more trays of rotting meat. Today's factory is a marvel of bioengineering. A rich, liquid protein slurry made from powdered blood, milk, and eggs piped into incubation trays. Rooms are kept at the exact temperature of living tissue. Every detail is controlled to simulate the sensation of being inside an animal. Then comes the sterilization. Precise doses of radiation, strong enough to neutralize reproduction, but gentle enough to keep the flies agile, fast, and seductive. They're loaded into dispersal units. Airplanes sweep across the skies with pinpoint GPS routes. Every 1.6 kilometers, a controlled burst of sterile flies is released, forming an invisible curtain of flesh. This is the wall, the last shield. But what happens when that wall cracks? In 2016, Paradis bled. Key deer small, endangered, beloved were suddenly spotted with open, festering wounds teeming with movement. Cochliomyia was back. After decades of silence, the flesh-eating parasite had somehow crossed the wall. Again, within days, the infection spread like wildfire across the islands. Deer collapsed, wildlife officials panicked, and planes were scrambled carrying millions of sterile flies in a race against time. The outbreak was contained, just barely. But the message was clear. The enemy wasn't gone, it had been waiting. Then came 2023. The wall in Panama or last line of defense cracked. Whether by human error, a freak transport, or nature slipping through the seams, Cochliomyia surged north again. This time with speed and fury. Panama, overrun. Costa Rica, breached. Mexico, under threat. And the sterile fly factory, it's running at full capacity every hour, every day dumping hundreds of millions of flies into the air in a desperate effort to rebuild the wall. This is no longer maintenance. This is war, a true biological emergency. Surveillance teams are combing through jungle and pasture, animal by animal. Planes hum endlessly overhead. Every new wound found is a race against time. Because once the screwworm gets ahead of us, catching up might be impossible. We built an army of sterile, radioactive flies. We dropped them from planes like rain. And somehow, that insane idea saved millions of lives. Because sometimes, the solutions that sound the most ridiculous are exactly the ones that change everything. It wasn't brute force that beat the screwworm. It was understanding, creativity, a willingness to ask, what if we tried the impossible? And that kind of thinking? That's not reserved for a select few. It's not some superpower granted at birth. It's a skill, a mindset. One that you can build one step, one puzzle, one breakthrough at a time. That's where our friends at In a Mind Nut come in. In a Mind Nut turns big ideas into hands-on experiences. From biology and logic to artificial intelligence and data science, they make learning feel like solving mysteries, because that's what it is. Not memorizing facts, but rewiring your brain to think differently, to see the invisible links like the one between a parasite and a plane, and who knows, maybe one day you come up with the next idea that sounds crazy, right before it saves the world.